Hello again. YouTube are very touchy about any discussion of the COVID-19 virus. So touchy, in fact, that I've already been suspended twice for talking about it. For that reason, I will confine myself to examining the general phenomenon of outlandish ideas which seem to attach themselves to any new virus which appears and infects people in large numbers. When I say outlandish, I do not mean to suggest that all such theories are false. After all, the idea that COVID-19 had escaped from a Chinese laboratory was at first dismissed as a mad conspiracy theory, but is now being seriously considered as a viable hypothesis for the origin of this particular virus. The thing which struck me when I first heard that idea being floated was that I had heard it being put forward before, 20 years ago. That immediately suggested to me that it might be more like some kind of urban myth which crops up from time to time in different forms, rather than a genuine explanation for anything. I wonder how many people remember the SARS virus, which made headlines in 2002. SARS is an acronym and it stands for Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome. In other words, it was a virus which, like COVID, affects the lungs. The outbreak of SARS lasted about a year and it killed, 800 people. So compared to COVID, it was a pretty small-scale business. There were fewer than 10,000 cases altogether in the entire world. What is interesting is that it was the subject of many odd theories which kept changing or mutating as time passed. A couple of Russian scientists suggested it was really an artificial mixture of the mumps and measles virus, and it could not have occurred naturally. This led to the theory that it was in fact a biological weapon devised in America and then launched against China. There were only 27 cases in the United States, but nearly all the other cases were in China. It was said that the Americans had tailored the virus to attack Chinese people and that Japanese scientists had helped them. This theory then faded away and mutated into another, which was that the Chinese themselves were to blame. The idea was that they'd been developing the virus as a biological weapon and it had escaped from a laboratory. Sound familiar? It was claimed that this was proved by the way that China tried to cover up the number of cases in the country and refused to cooperate fully with the World Health Organization in investigating the origin of the virus. This really is a bit odd because precisely the same things which are now being said about COVID were circulating as long ago as 2002. Either the Chinese are really, really careless about letting biological weapons escape, or people just like to blame China for viruses as a default setting. Perhaps this is because the two greatest flu pandemics since the Second World War were named Hong Kong flu and Asian flu, which might prime us to see China as a likely source for troublesome viruses. The final theory which emerged about SARS also had a rather topical feel. It was that scientists and industrialists connected with the New World Order had created the virus in order to reduce the world's population to manageable levels. What I find curious here is that just as viruses have a tendency to mutate according to circumstance and changed conditions, so too do the theories attached to them. They seem to alter in precisely the same way. I know that they're a different thing entirely. Obviously, the theories are sociological phenomena, but it's odd that they should change and mutate in precisely the same way that the viruses themselves do. 6 years after the SARS epidemic ended, a new virus emerged, the H1N1 strain of influenza, which became known as swine flu. The first cases were reported in Mexico in April 2009, and it then spread around the world, killing thousands of people. The World Health Organization declared it to be a pandemic. This virus was noticeable for the fact that the vaccine developed to fight it became the subject of a conspiracy theory, one which foreshadowed some of the theories which would later be recycled. Specifically for the COVID-19 pandemic. The story which circulated in 2009 was quite specific. Companies like GlaxoSmithKline and Roche, the Swiss company, were facing declining profits at the time for various reasons. The vaccine developed for swine flu enabled them to regain their dominance of the pharmaceutical market, and so it was alleged that they had actually developed both the virus and the vaccine together in order to create a pandemic and then profit from it by releasing a vaccine. This is interesting because, as I say, there's a lot of the conspiracy theories around COVID are concerned with the vaccine more than the virus itself. Then it was suggested that George Bush had ordered the release of the virus because he wanted to wreck Barack Obama's presidency. But that really did strike me, even at the time, as being a little far-fetched. I have no idea at all which, if any of the ideas currently doing the rounds about COVID-19 might turn out to be correct. I am, though, a little suspicious when I see stories about bioweapons escaping from Chinese laboratories and sinister plots by Big Pharma being recycled a decade or two later. Don't even get me started about the theories which have done the rounds about AIDS over the years.